Have you ever wondered why house prices and other financial assets are expensive, difficult to buy, and it's difficult for you to save and invest for your future? I'm Rob Price, and I'm talking to you about sound money. Inequality is a major challenge in the 2020s. There are many ways to look at inequality in different countries. One of the most interesting and obvious ways to view inequality is between generations. If you look in America, millennials hold about 5% of US assets. And by comparison, baby boomers, who were the generation born after the Second World War, at a comparable age, they held 25% of US assets. There are many inequalities that exist for natural reasons, and there's not particularly too much point in trying to change those. But a 5 times difference in wealth between millennials at their current stage and baby boomers at a comparable age suggests that there's something more significant taking place below the surface that needs to be investigated and understood. Debt and the economic policies that create debt are a key factor in driving this growing trend in income inequality that people don't talk about nearly often enough. Let me explain. When policymakers implement low interest rates and budget deficits and other loosening of monetary and fiscal policies, what they do is they encourage and coerce society to take out debt. Now, they have reasons for implementing these policies, but there are consequences to doing so that are sometimes not spoken about. When that new debt is created, it finds expression in the economy in some way, shape, or form. It can go into food prices, it can go into petrol prices, it could go into transport prices, but it can also go into asset prices. When I say asset prices, I'm talking about property prices, equity prices, bond prices, these financial assets that we save in. And that's what's happened over the last 30 years. This massive growth in debt in the global economy has found expression in financial assets. And it's very obvious to see that if you look at the valuation of these assets, financial assets, equities, bonds, property, and many other financial assets, they are much more expensive today in the 2020s than they were in the 1980s, the 1990s. And that has consequences. The people who hold those assets have benefited. That's a wonderful experience for them. If you buy the asset at a cheap price and it goes up in price, that's the outcome that you're looking for. That's a desirable outcome. But of course, the people who don't hold the assets don't have that experience. So it's no surprise then that you see a big increase in wealth inequality if the people who are holding financial assets are experiencing that wonderful increase in the price of those assets. But unfortunately, the people who don't hold those assets don't have the same experience. Now, as we've shown, it's very obvious to see this increase in inequality between generations, between millennials and between baby boomers. But numerous other segments of society would have been impacted in a similar way. Any segment of society that didn't hold financial assets or didn't hold many financial assets in the 1980s or the 1990s wouldn't have experienced the boom in asset prices in the same way. And they would have got poorer relative to those people who did hold the assets. Now, there's nothing wrong with wealth creation, wealthy people, wealthy generations. I've got nothing against baby boomers. But we cannot have a policy in society that creates this negative outcome of inequality. And inequality is just one of the negative outcomes of these debt policies that we've had over the last 30 years. We need to reject the short-term policies of using lower interest rates and debt as a solution to all problems, because that is the way that policymakers tend to approach any social, economic, financial problem that they see. They want to lower interest rates and create more debt. And that is not the answer. The point that I'm trying to get across to you here is that there are consequences to taking those actions. Government's inability to offer alternative solutions is why you're seeing a growing number of people interested in alternative forms of money, like Bitcoin. I really encourage you to spend more of your time understanding this technology and the linkages to the relationships that I've been speaking about in this video. If you'd like to find out more, follow the link below and send through your questions so that I can direct you towards the relevant information.